Hi guys, I'm Andy from OpenTools, and I will talk a little bit about OpenTools at the end, but the thing that I really wanted to share is some really exciting news coming straight from the MCP GitHub discussions. When Paul told me to give this lightning talk, he said that you should assume that everyone in this crowd is very smart, very curious, but not necessarily following every single GitHub issue in the MCP protocol repo. So I'm about to share what I think is really great, which is that MCP is now stateless. But before we get lost in the sauce and talk too much about the technical weeds, I wanted to motivate why I think MCP is interesting in the first place. And that is that I feel like we're essentially retrofitting the internet for this new species of thing called agents. And if it works, if we figure out this MCP thing correctly, then there will be a swarm of Andy agents running around the internet, doing all of your bidding, acting in your interests. Or Andy agents for me, whatever your name is, they'll do it for you. But essentially this is kind of the future that I hope for. But naturally you have to ask yourself, what is an agent? And this is the definition that resonates best with me. It's really a model that has a tool or tools in a loop. And that's not an original definition. Anthropic came up with that. But to go one step further, you might ask, what is a tool? And I would say it is code that's running somewhere with docs or context or instructions on how and when to use it best. But if you squint, that's kind of the same thing as REST APIs. That's also code running somewhere with documentation. And so you would think that maybe this retrofitting thing is not that hard. If we have plenty of REST APIs, isn't it essentially the same thing as tools? Shouldn't this be a fairly easy upgrade path? And well, in the first version of MCP, the answer was not really, or they wouldn't allow it so straightforwardly because it was important in the original design to have bidirectionality in a long-lived, persistent connection. And so for a long time, HTTP via server-sent events was the only supported remote transport protocol in the spec. And why was that problematic? Well, why was that good? Let's start there. In order to steelman this, I think this was pretty smart and it was maybe thinking a few steps ahead in that you basically support hierarchical agents working together. Because when you have this bidirectionality, when a client calls a server, that's like kind of the normal pattern where you're trying to invoke some tools. But if you have bidirectionality, servers can also call clients, and they can also basically ask for more context, rerun an inference call. And while that sounds pretty cool in theory, I think in practice it was a little bit tougher. And even though it enables cool hierarchical structures like this, in practice it was a little bit tough. And you can see that for a few reasons. One is that you can't use your favorite serverless functions deployment platform. It's pretty resource intensive to keep a bunch of persistent long-lived connections open. And when you look at the docs for, in this case, exemplary MCP clients, you actually find that in the column of like which of these clients is supporting sampling, it's actually pretty empty. For the most part, nobody's actually implemented, including Cloud Desktop. Maybe that's coming. Maybe it'll be later, but that's the current state of things. And I think Anthropic, to their credit, saw this. And that's the great news I want to share, is that there's a PR that's open that basically supports fully stateless servers with just HTTP. And this guy who runs a very successful e-commerce shop was very excited about it as well. And so why is this important? I think it lowers the barrier to entry for server developers. And that's crucial for MCP actually working, because the more servers there are, that begets better clients. That opens the door for like Windsurf and Cursor to join, which begets more servers. And the network effect just keeps rolling. And ideally, MCP just runs with it. But it's also great because this whole retrofitting thing that we were talking about in the beginning is easier. And you can go, it's a much more straightforward path from well-documented REST API to model-friendly context for each tool, each function. So I'm happy to report that we are back on the blessed path, which is great. That being said, as I stand here before you today, I would like to claim that there's an even easier way to use MCP tools. There's actually an even shorter path where you don't even need to know what MCP is to use it. And so that's what we built at Open Tools. Under the hood, we're an MCP client, but you don't need to know that. Every tool you add is a one-liner. And if you want to see the demo, which I won't do here because it's a lightning talk, you can go to this URL. That's all. Thank you.